John's over here reminiscing about Elton John concerts and Boston winners, while I'm here defending my entire personality again. My attitude, my voice. Dang, y'all. Let's get into it and meet me in the comments.
This is John Dunson, and welcome to another episode of I Take Your Point podcast. I am joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Lynn Sequins, because she is wearing, apparently, something from the bygone era of disco. That's so on brand for you. The fact that your best concert...
Fun. It was all fun, and we were just, I've been to ACL.
What are you doing with your hair?
You just making me hot. We've been to ACL, so there's always that too. Can we move on?
What is
The Austin City Limits. So it used to be a 1 week event, and all of these musicians would come in. It's like $35, 2 days of just all of these different stages of musicians coming in. You could just walk around. It was super cool. But then Austin became Plano, Texas, just so greedy. And now it's 2 weekends. It is a monstrosity. And I haven't been there in years, but a lot of well-known artists will come, and it's just 2 weekends of just music, all kinds of music.
Well, my first concert that I remember attending was Luther Vandross and Anita Baker, and this would have been in 89, 89, 90. And it was such an event. Luther gave great concerts. The best concert that I attended, and again, I was shocked that this would be one of the best that I attended, would be a Elton John concert that I attended.
Look at you.
Well, part of it's because Elton John is
Welcome. Come over here. You're always welcome.
Elton John is a great storyteller, and I love his encyclopedia of discography, I should say, discography of music. And it was a great concert. I truly enjoyed it. Also enjoyed a Toni Braxton's concert back, and this is going to tie back to Boston. This would have been in 97, 98, and she had Mint Condition. Do you know who Mint Condition is?
Again, what is up with these quizzes? It's just like random pop quiz. In the past, you're not a teacher now. Move on with your story. You don't need to have my input. It was a great story.
So if
you don't need to pause.
So if I'm saying she had Mint Condition backing her, and I'm asking you,
for her.
Mint Condition, you don't know who...
Why do we need to know that? I don't understand what the purpose of this conversation is. Could you please continue again? Focus.
Yes. So that tying that back onto Boston, that was probably one of the best things that I did when I lived in Boston, was attend the Toni Braxton backed by Mint Condition concert. Speaking of Boston, again, because it's one of those cities that I have a not love, hate relationship with. It's a great city to visit, a terrible city to live in. And even though I'm a Southerner and have lived the majority of my life in the South or the Southeast, 17 years in the great state of South Carolina, 2 years in Boston, 9 years in Washington, D.C., and almost 27, 28 years here in Atlanta. One of the things that I'm always struck by is the racism that exists in Boston, and the racism that is tied to individuals who you would think would be cultured, or individuals who you think would be evolved. And it's one of those cities, every time I visit, my back gets a little up. And I was trying to figure out why that is when I was in Boston this time. And I think one of the things that struck me was, and I always said this to someone, that when I moved to Boston, I moved there from DC. DC at that time was called Chocolate City. And it was, in a lot of ways, Mecca for diversity, and especially for Black folk, because you had Black folk in power. And I was in college at the time, or in grad school at the time, and moved to Boston. And it was a complete opposite for me, because whereas DC was predominantly African-American, Boston was not. And if you were a member of what I call the Three I's, Boston was your heaven. If you were Irish, Italian, or Israelite, Boston was the thing for, it was the shit for you. And so when I visit, I'm always struck by the city and the changes in the city, and what it is that I learned by living in the city. And as I was walking across the city during my stay there this week and visiting the campus of Northeastern, where I went to grad school, it struck me that the thing that I sort of didn't mesh well with me in Boston was it's a cold city from the standpoint of
Okay. Tell me more.
so it's there's it has culture.
Hmm.
There's a lot of culture because of just the nature of the universities and the
Hmm.
different ethnicities that are there,
Hmm.
but it lacks that soul. It lacks
Hmm.
that warmth that
Hmm.
I believe allows me to feel comfortable. And
Hmm.
that's what I took away from my recent step back in Boston because great restaurants, great downtown area, which is where I was living while I was there. I lived in three cities while I was in Boston. I lived in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Brookline. Brookline, well-to-do area, right on the main one of the main strips in Boston. Even the house that I lived in or rented at that time was warmed by this like radiator heat. So it wasn't central heating and air. It was
Uh-huh.
more of, heating coming from the radiator. So it was old. So things like that in terms of warmth. That's what I equate to Boston. Have you
Okay,
ever
so temperature.
it's not just it's not just the temperature, it's the people.
Hmm, interesting. Okay.
It's when I say the warmth of lacking soul. It's hard to explain, and I'm probably not doing a great job in terms of trying to explain it. But
Hmm.
I say it again. It is the most racist city I've ever lived in.
Oh, okay.
And again, living in the South for as long as I
Mhm.
have, it's the one city that I just cannot find comfort in.
Do you go ahead?
No,
I was going to say, do you sometimes feel because you are in the South, and this is one thing that is just challenging for me going any place in the South is just the people wanting to engage. And so I'm not used to people just, hi, how you doing? I'm like, whoa, stay over there. Why do you need to engage with me? And I know that you and I have been in spaces before, and you are constantly talking to people. And I'm like, what is this? Why are we engaging with people? So, do you feel that because people aren't as familiar and wanting to be part of your personal life, that you're finding that is like the racism? Or do you, because I didn't feel that. And I lived in Massachusetts when I was young, but for a year. And I just feel that for me, I'm not the type of person that needs to engage with somebody in the elevator or on the street. Hey, which conference you going to? Hey, where'd you get that? What's your dog's name? I don't give a shit. Like this, I don't need to talk to you.
no, I don't think it's that. And I'm not surprised that you can.
Again, I don't need anybody else's story to be interesting. Like I just don't need to engage with you like that.
I don't know. I look, Boston, look, to be fair, and I was thinking about this during my trip there. I was thinking, okay, of the places that I've been, and I think about the people that I formed relationships with outside of one fraternity brother who I pledged. I can't think of another lasting relationship from my 2 years in Boston. I can't point to one thing that said, okay, this is a relationship that ties me to Boston. I don't have
Mm,
that connection to the city. The thing that I do love about Boston, and I will down this hill, Dunkin' Donuts coffee because Dunkin' Donuts has
wow, to
yeah
me.
yeah I will down the hill that
Actually,
well,
down with that.
not a donut coffee. Dunkin' Donuts coffee. There's a difference. Dunkin' Donuts donuts are trash. Dunkin' Donuts coffee is some of the best inexpensive coffee that one can buy. Now that said, I think that yes, Southerners, we are a very relationship oriented people,
Mhm.
meaning that we are individuals that necessarily don't necessarily need to get in your business, but we like to strike a conversation and that
Mhm.
conversation allows us to get to know you.
And I wonder, that's why I'm challenging you. I just want you to reflect and just think about could that possibly the word that you're using, racism, could it be something else? And I'm gonna ask you, have you traveled much in Europe? Because like I've been to Paris, I've been to London, I've been all over the place. And I found like in Paris, they just don't talk to you. They're just like, whatever, whatever.
I don't, yeah, and I've traveled, not extensively, but I've traveled. I would say that with Boston, it was more of the attitude. It's the only place I've ever had a gun pulled on me ever.
Really, I find that extremely surprising. I just feel like that would be part of your experience on the daily.
Wow.
I mean, it's just the way you challenge people. I just would think that that would happen. Like that
No,
your
it's
ex-girlfriend that
it's one of the only places where they didn't have to say it, but I felt the N word.
That's interesting. And it's also because there's this progressive liberal narrative that permeates throughout the city. If you're feeling that, like there's this, and then what I'm hearing you say, there's an undercurrent of uncomfortableness, maybe racism that you're defining as racism.
No, I'm not defining it as race. I mean, Boston, if you look at the history of Boston and a
Hmm.
lot of Black folk that either have lived in Boston or visited Boston, I mean, the stories are well told
Hmm.
with former athletes. Even the great Bill Russell talked about the racism that exists in the city. And I believe the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald, I can't remember which one, did a 7-part or five-part or 7-part
Okay.
series a couple years ago talking about the racism that existed.
Mm.
And I think part of it is because Boston is so segregated. It's the most segregated city I've ever lived in. And it has different pockets, whether it's South, whether you live in South Boston, whether
Mhm.
you live in Roxbury, which is predominantly African American. I will say this. I was surprised at the large African or Eritrean population that
Mm.
existed in Boston. And
Interesting.
I want to revisit something I said in terms of relationships. I did form great relationships with the Eritrean community when I was in the city of Boston.
What was her name?
Shady. You're shady. You're shady, man. So, Boston, in and of itself, is a great city to visit. It's a terrible city, in my opinion, to live.
Mm. Okay.
And again, I wish the individuals who lived there Godspeed and best results. And Mr. Byron, excuse me, who is obviously now navigating the things that he has found himself in by being the
Hmm.
CEO or former CEO of a Boston tech company. Here's to making certain that you understand that people in Boston are shady, man. So you got to watch
People
those.
in the world are shady. We're all shady.
I don't know about that. The guy had a work crush, and you've had many work
I,
crushes.
well, you know what? Actually, I married my work crush. Okay, I was gonna say something, but you know what? I did do that.
Really? Okay.
I totally.
Tell me more. So you stalk him?
I did not. I moved here from Texas. I needed a tennis partner. He played tennis, and the next thing you know, I had two kids.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens between tennis and two kids. So apparently there were some balls being hit.
Moving on.
So speaking of work crushes, when have you ever been in the situation with a work crush where someone has made advances at you and you're like, okay, no, not, we're not going to do this. And let's say that that person was Mr. Byron and he was in a position of authority over you. Have you ever been in that situation? If you had been the HR person?
If I've been the HR person.
Yeah, the HR person that Mr. Byron was having the relationship with, and you decided that you did not want to have that relationship with him.
So, my generation, we are pretty, or I'm sorry, adapt. What is the word I'm looking for? Yeah,
Adapt.
that's it. Oh my God. It's so
Mhm.
hot in here. Let's just take all that out. Anyway, yes, we're very good at navigating uncomfortable situations. And I can remember and I've worked in predominantly male environments. So being in tech companies, I remember being one of two women full of men. And so it's usually for me, which I do not recommend because I love Gen Z right now. They are amazing at having agency and independence and saying absolutely not. One of the things that was effective for me was leaning into innocence, like I don't know what you're talking about, and then pivoting away. And I think that sometimes men,
I'm sorry. You say you leaned into innocence?
I did. I would act like I didn't know what they were talking about. And I think that sometimes people will test the waters to see how you respond to things. I remember there was one incident. I was in a conference room and it was just all engineers and me. And it was cold in there. And they said, "Oh, Coretta, is it cold?" Oh, actually, take my name out of that. Lynn, is it cold? And it was because my shirt was tighter and it was cold in there. And I said to them, "Don't you ever say that to me again. Don't you ever talk to me like that. Don't you ever disrespect me like that." So I think that sometimes it's the voices, and we talked about this before. Sometimes people that have a voice and they're stronger, we have to stand up and we have to be in those spaces for women that find themselves in uncomfortable situations. But I've always been very effective at getting myself out of situations. I don't partake in after hour. If we go out to sales meetings or whatever, I don't drink. I don't do any of those things. I don't try and put myself in positions where I have to make or navigate through uncomfortable experiences. And I'm not, please take this, I am not blaming anyone if they find themselves in those situations, because sometimes you don't even realize you got into those situations. And then you have to make split second decisions. Okay, how am I going to get out of this? But yes, I am always aware, and I always lean into, I don't know what you're talking about. I move on. I always use humor, and then I deflect away and I get myself out of it.
Yeah. Thanks
You
for.
like my hair, by the way? I moved it to something else.
Yeah, I'm just.
You like my pretty brown eyes? It was mented. It was a callback. Remember? Don't look at me like that.
Silence again is me again not paying attention to your crazy and just mind boggled by your ignorance of some things with the culture. Speaking of ignorance with the culture, there was some incidents that happened. I shouldn't say incidents. There were some comments this week that happened with respect to the squad on social media this episode about your meanness and how your slick mouth was causing some of the guys to want to sort of keep you in the kitchen and possibly barefoot and pregnant. So what say you about some of the comments that you were received that were directed at you about your bad attitude?
I don't. It's going to be the exact same thing as I always say, which apparently I'll keep saying. So we can just go ahead and play it on repeat. I don't care. I mean, that is your opinion. I am who I am. I will take, and I always do this. I always take some feedback and I say, okay, how did that come across? And obviously people don't know me. They don't know my brand. They don't know my sense of humor, that I think I'm funny, maybe, and other people do not think that I'm funny, and they don't receive it that way. But I am who I am. I'm like Popeye. Is that Popeye? At any rate, moving on. No, I can take in the information, I can reflect on it and say, okay, let me be a little bit softer until we establish this Southern relationship. But
This what?
just like this engagement that apparently you people like I just don't.
You people, what are you people?
You Southerners. I said, so I'm going to say that again, and this is my last time saying that. Don't ask me again. That I'm going to say that my relationship with this man, Johnny, I have a lot of respect and admiration for him, but I do not bow down to anyone, especially this Southerner. I'm not doing it. I don't care what kind of Howard University hat he has on. I don't care what kind of signs he's flashing. I don't care. We have a mutual respect with each other. Sometimes my brand is not everybody else's cup of tea, but I come to you with open arms. So now I come to you. Okay, that's Journey. Do you know a Journey song? Do you know another Journey song? Thanks for tuning in to another lively conversation on I Take Your Point. This podcast is a production of the SME LLC Media Group. All rights reserved. If you are enjoying the show, hit the subscribe button in the top right corner. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and check out past episodes. Until next time, take care and be well.